What if I told you that Charles Leclerc has discovered something in Hamilton's car that could be sabotaging his season? And that Ferrari could be hiding more than it seems? From the first moment, Leclerc has shown a curiously analytical attitude regarding the arrival of Hamilton. In his own words, he admitted to having been surprised by how much his driving style coincided with that of the British. This confession, that many could overlook as a simple courtesy among colleagues, actually contains a crucial technical revelation. Both address curves with similar aggressiveness, especially in the entrance phase, which implies that both demand identical mechanical characteristics of the car. In other words, the technical needs of one should also benefit the other. But it is precisely where Ferrari's silent fracture begins. Because despite this coincidence in the way of piloting, the results do not reflect that synergy. Leclerc has been able to extract solid performance from the SF-25, while Hamilton has been involved in a storm of technical inconsistencies. Lewis himself, after the Japan Grand Prix, had no qualms about verbalizing his frustration. He declared that they had detected a problem that had been affecting their car for several races, an anomaly that was making him lose more than a tenth by return. In a category where thousands define championships, that difference is devastating. The interesting thing about this discovery is how it occurred. Sources close to the team have revealed that it was from a cross-analysis session between engineers and pilots when Leclerc noticed patterns that did not align with what he felt in his car. Hamilton's SF-25 telemetry showed an erratic response in prolonged braking and inconsistent aerodynamic behavior in the front axle load. These anomalies were not attributable to pilot errors, but to internal mechanical variables that apparently escaped the initial simulations of the team. This finding shakes several pillars of the Ferrari-Hamilton project. First, it raises the disturbing possibility that Hamilton's chassis is defective or badly calibrated with respect to Leclerc. Second, it launches an alert on the assembly and quality control process of the Italian team. And third, it generates doubts about Ferrari's ability to manage technical equality among its pilots, something that has historically been the subject of controversy within the Scuderia. But beyond the figures and technical analysis, there is an emotional layer in this story that cannot be ignored. Hamilton arrived in Ferrari with the illusion of closing his career as a legend hero, but has encountered a start that reminds the darkest episodes of big names that also tried and failed in Maranello. Its adaptation to the environment, to the team, and especially to the car, has been compromised by a problem that should not even have existed. This initial act not only raises a technical mystery, but it shows a background conflict. When two pilots demand the same of the car and one of them does not get it, is it just a matter of chance, or is there anything else? That is the question that begins to take shape in Ferrari's halls. When a technical problem is detected as significant in the car of a pilot as the one that currently affects Lewis Hamilton, the implications are not limited solely to track performance. In a team like Ferrari, where every second is dissected and each data is analyzed to exhaustion, a defect that causes a constant loss of more than a tenth by return cannot be seen as a simple technical discomfort. It is a direct threat to championship aspirations, both individually and collectively. But, in addition, it can be the trigger for an internal imbalance that completely alters equipment dynamics. Its pilot alignment is designed to push internal competitiveness to the limit and maximize the technical development of the car. But when one of those pillars wobbles, the entire structure is in danger of destabilizing. Internally, engineers must choose: invest resources and time to solve a specific problem that affects only one of the cars, or continue developing the SF-25 under the indications of the pilot that, until now, has had better results. That is a decision with deep implications, because any perception of favoritism or negligence can dynamite the cohesion of the team. In addition, there is the political aspect. Hamilton is not just one more pilot. It is a global figure with an immense media presence and a history that gives it a specific weight within the garage. If the team does not act quickly in transparency, it runs the risk of eroding the relationship with one of the most valuable pieces of its sports project. And as the history of Formula One has repeatedly demonstrated, when tensions between a star pilot and his team are not properly handled, the consequences can be irreparable. All this happens while the rivals McLaren, Mercedes, even Red Bull does not give truce. In a championship that is emerging as one of the most matched in recent times, losing ground due to internal problems is not just a technical disadvantage. It is a competitive sentence. Ferrari needs to act. You need to identify exactly what has failed in Hamilton's car, correct it quickly, and restore the technical equality that your project presumes. Because if they do not, the cost will not be only in points or podiums. It will be in credibility. And in Formula One, that is worth as much as a world championship. Ferrari has reached a moment of bifurcation. The technical problem that has affected Lewis Hamilton's car can no longer be interpreted as an isolated incident or as a simple adaptation curve of the British pilot. It is a clear indication that something deeper could be failing within the operational structure of the equipment. And the most worrying is not the defect itself, but the reaction or lack of it by the technical and directive dome of the Scuderia. Internally, tensions begin to demonstrate in the form of contradictory decisions. While a part of the team insists that the convergence of styles between Leclerc and Hamilton should facilitate the development of SF-25, another fraction indicates that this same similarity has generated an illusion of equality that is not reflected in real data. The perception that Hamilton is working with a less efficient car, despite the fact that on paper both cars should be identical, puts Ferrari before a paradox. They have signed a world champion to lead a project, but they are limiting it with a defective car from the start of the season. The lack of forceful public statements by Frédéric Vasseur, the team director, also feeds uncertainty. There has not been a press conference in which the existence of the problem is clearly assumed, nor has a detailed explanation of the solution plans been given. This administrative silence in an environment like Formula One can only be interpreted in two ways. Either they are working intensely in silence to correct the ruling with discretion, or are trying to prevent an internal crisis from becoming a media storm. But even if the objective is to protect the reputation of the equipment, this approach has a cost. The narrative that begins to form outside the paddock is that Ferrari is not offering Hamilton the same level of attention or technical support as to Leclerc. And although this perception may not have a solid technical foundation, in elite sport perception is almost as dangerous as reality. An alleged lack of technical equity can fracture the internal cohesion of the team, divide the technical staff and create sides in the garage. And what is even worse, it can demoralize Hamilton himself. The British is no stranger to political struggles within a team. He lived in McLaren during his first stage, he endured him in Mercedes when the tension with Nico Rosberg reached historical levels, and knows how to read between the lines when something is not working. In Ferrari, that experience translates into a much colder and faster posture. Your statements, although measures, are already beginning to have a different tone. It has gone from talking about adaptation to indirectly questioning the technical support it receives. And if this trend continues, it is not unreasonable to think that it begins to exert internal pressure to demand answers, results, or even structural changes. From a broader perspective, Hamilton's problem is a symptom of something greater. Ferrari has been oscillating between the attempt to modernize its internal structure and the weight of its operational traditions. The arrival of Vasseur intended to be a turning point, but this situation shows that the team is still trapped between what it wants to be and what it really is. A team that presumes excellence, but stumbles with execution errors that should be overcome. In addition, the lack of consistency between the two cars could also end up affecting the development strategy. If Ferrari fails to synchronize the sensations of both pilots with a coherent evolution of the SF-25, runs the risk of compromising their update program. Each new aerodynamic package, each adjustment in the suspension or electronics, requires clear and unified feedback. But if one of the pilots is working with a car that behaves erratically, the information collected is contaminated, and the technical decisions become more uncertain. And then the inevitable question arises: is Ferrari ready to make drastic decisions to solve this on time, or will they allow the problem to be enclosed and end up sabotaging the entire season? Because in Formula One, the teams not only compete on the track. They compete in the offices and crisis management, in the ability to recognize errors and correct the course before it is too late. This is the moment of truth for Ferrari. They have two elite pilots, a car with competitive potential, and a unique opportunity to return to the top. But if they do not solve the internal imbalance and do not restore equal conditions between Leclerc and Hamilton, which seemed like a promising season could quickly transform into another frustrating story within the extensive archive of wasted opportunities in Maranello. What Charles Leclerc discovered in Hamilton's SF-25 is not just a technical curiosity or an anecdote of the paddock. It is, potentially, the most important crack that has come to light in this start of the 2025 season. The fact that two pilots with such similar styles are receiving technical responses so different from a car that, on paper, should behave in the same way, opens a box of questions that could affect the entire development of the championship. This discovery marks a turning point, because it is not simply to find and solve a mechanical failure. This is what this failure symbolizes within the Ferrari structure. It is a reflection of the internal processes of the team, of its ability to detect problems, to react on time, and above all, to protect technical equality among its pilots. And if a pilot like Hamilton, with the experience, the trajectory and the authority it has, is found since the beginning of the season in a situation of mechanical inferiority, the problem ceases to be sports and becomes institutional. Ferrari, a team that lives under the magnifying glass of the entire world, cannot afford this type of structural errors. Much less when he has opted to build a redemption narrative around Hamilton's arrival. This was the year in which the Scuderia had to show not only a competitive car, but also an organization capable of sustaining a struggle for the title without falling into the old traps of the operating chaos. But what is happening seems to show that the past has not yet left. And this is where you follow every detail, every onboard, every GPS data. You have a key role. Do you think Ferrari is hiding something from the public state of Hamilton SF-25? Do you think we are seeing the first signs of another internal break in Maranello? Or do you think this is just an initial bump in a project that can still be consolidated? Leave your opinion in the comments. Is this the beginning of the end of the Hamilton-Ferrari project? Or is it, on the contrary, the exact point where the team will finally learn from their mistakes and build something lasting?